All right, welcome. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're the CEO of Perplexity AI, which is a knowledge and answer engine for consumer search, and we'll talk about what that all means. You're a very young company. You started a little over a year ago, but you sort of like burst onto the scene very impressively and very quickly. With a very quick pace of releases, which has been really fun to watch from afar. And you've also certainly caught the attention of the venture capital world with a rapid succession of rounds. Including last night, there was some leak that you may or may not have been in the process of raising 50 million at a $500 million valuation, which for a company that's a year old is really impressive. So I will not ask you to confirm or deny, but I'll just say that it's front page of the information, the publication. So other than that, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, we love giving information to people.
Yes. All right. I would love to start with your story. You moved to the US about 6 or 7 years ago. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, 6 years ago, approximately around this time in 2017, I came here to do my PhD in AI. Back then, AI was not, cannot even pull this much crowd for an academic conference. But now it's like so hot. None of us knew that at that time. So it was purely curiosity driven. And also, I really wanted to come to the US. And
that was Berkeley, right?
That was Berkeley, yeah. Berkeley was like the #1 school in AI at that time. I believe maybe it's around competitive with Stanford now. But at that time, it was like undisputed. So around 40 people got admitted into Berkeley in AI out of 2,000 applications or something. I got lucky to get in. And I think about 38 of them ended up coming to Berkeley. 2 of them went to MIT or Stanford. So it was that hot in terms of academic interest at that time. I did good research that got me an internship at OpenAI the next summer. This was OpenAI was 30, 40 people, non-profit. I think my first week or two, we couldn't even get a work laptop. It was that much of a,
Hey, it's non-profit.
Yeah, Elon Musk was leaving at the time. So it was not the kind of OpenAI today, which is formidable force in the AI. So I got to learn a lot during PhD, and that got me more and more excited into AI. And in the next year, I got an intern at DeepMind, which was actually the more prominent lab at that time. I would read these books in their library, like In the Plex and How Google Works, and was very inspired by Larry Page. Actually, this is not said in hindsight to make up a story because we are working on a search engine. It's really true, and that's why I was very inspired to start a company too.
And you went back to OpenAI upon graduation, right? To spend a year.
I went back because I couldn't start any company after my PhD, either because the idea was too grand that nobody would want to come work with me, or I had visa problems to start it all by myself. So I felt the best thing to do was find a job and continue to keep exploring and learning more. But around the time in maybe February or March in 2022, news started spreading that there were companies like Jasper and Copy.ai that started making more money than even OpenAI at the time. And that was amazing. Okay, people are building products. This is real. And GitHub Copilot, when they moved away from the wait list to the paid version, they just had hundreds of thousands of people paying from the first day. And so that all made it clear that stuff that we were all thinking was just new ideas and research was more about strong execution, building teams, and shipping products. So I really wanted to be part of that too, and reached out to two prominent investors in Silicon Valley, Elad Gil and Nat Friedman, and they both were willing to invest. And people were like, if these two guys are, backing you, you should just do it. Even if it fails, like you learn a lot. It's like getting MBA and getting paid to do it rather than paying Stanford or Harvard. So that's why we decided to start.
It's a good use of VC money.
Exactly.
Yes. So obviously we're going to talk, all about you. But quick word on OpenAI and your experience. The second time you sort of came back after your internship, presumably that was no longer the 35 person nonprofit company. What was it like working at OpenAI in like 21 and 22?
It was cool. Like I think at that time GPT-3 was already there. GPT 3.5 was being developed, and GPT-4 was not even there. The biggest hit at the time was GitHub Copilot and DALL-E 2. Both of them were really cool, and it was not clear, like whether for a successful product you needed the largest compute put on it. That was not clear at that time, because like Jasper and GitHub Copilot were all like tiny models making a lot of money. Similarly, like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney were all like pretty competitive with DALL-E 2 and actually probably making more money than DALL-E 2. So that part was unclear. So I wasn't very not just me, like most people were not sure like what is in it for GPT 3.5 or 4. But so obviously I was wrong, like ChatGPT and GPT-4 are like the reason why OpenAI is so formidable today. So that nobody predicted, and I didn't predict it either.
And you are a research scientist there. What does that mean? What's the reality of a job if you're a research scientist at OpenAI?
Yeah, so research scientist, I was more in the like open-ended research team that tinkers and tries new things. So I was exploring new architectures for diffusion, like audio and text models together. There is no like direction. You kind of are given the freedom to explore with limited compute. So you kind of have to like be patient and try to like strike gold somewhere. That's sort of the idea. And so some of the hits through that mode of research for OpenAI has been, I would say the DALL-E is like a big project that came out of like, that kind of research. So I was also pursuing something of that nature for, multiple modalities together. But it was individual contributor. Like I would work alone and try to like get things done.
And then do you effectively have to compete for GPUs so that
there is competition internally for GPUs, and people at the top decide based on like intermediate results you show and like importance of other projects in the company, and like deadlines and stuff like that. So that was always difficult, and I think being a great individual contributor in research requires a lot of patience, and being a great startup founder requires a lot of impatience. So obviously that's why I ended up becoming a founder, because I was not patient. That especially when you have to like keep like competing for GPUs and like try to like work individually and like get to a point where like you have like a great demo, right? So these are like two completely different modes of work. Like you can excel at anything, but you got to pick what you want to excel in.
Great. So you got your visa, you got the VCs to provide you with MBA money, and then so you just set out to build that company that you had sort of started dreaming up while you were at DeepMind. Do you want to talk about actually what the company does? Like I said, it's a rapidly emerging company and brand, but maybe people haven't yet come across it necessarily. So just what's the high level?
What's the high level of why I started the company?
Of Perplexity? What does it do?
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of started with the thesis that LLMs are gonna keep getting better and like are amazing, and like it's the time to build products around them, and it'll create a lot of value. But we had no idea like what to build. Um, and so obviously I went by ideas given to me by my investors. So we started with like prototyping text to SQL, just like very even now like no one actually has made any big progress there, right? It's like one of those things that is an amazing investment idea, but somehow like nobody's capturing any market there. So
Actually, without going into like a different rabbit hole, why is that? Actually, find that fascinating, because indeed there's so many people that are trying and it doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be working, or maybe I don't know. But what is the issue?
Yeah, so our lessons from that is like text to SQL is only a product market fit when you have so much data and when you're such a large company that people actually need to keep munging data to like figure out what decisions to make, and the people at the top like need help here, instead of bothering the data engineers. So it's kind of like a technology that you have to sell to a bigger company, like a more mature company. And those mature companies have most of their data in like Snowflake or Databricks. And a lot, and they're not just going to give you the data. Like you go to a Series B or C or like even more advanced companies, they're just not going to give you their access to their internal data that easily. So then neither are they going to move fast for you. And this is basically like the lack of alignment between a startup trying to build and sell that technology and the company that's actually buying the technology. So that's where the fundamental misalignment is. And the smaller startups that will actually move fast and work with you on these things, they just don't have enough data. Like, in fact, I would talk to some people who are doing sales at some companies, and they'll be like, "I just have a spreadsheet. Like, why would I use, like Airtable or Salesforce or HubSpot? Like, I have only like 20 customers anyway, so I don't need all of these things. I can just like keep a track of it in my head." So that's the problem. And like, the bigger companies like Databricks or Snowflake might build these tools and offer it on their SQL editor or like some kind of like, assistant. And that could probably solve the problem. It's not a great problem for a startup to work on.
And then just to drive it home for like anybody that may or may not know what text to SQL is, like it's this idea of like democratizing access to data analysis, and basically you type in something in natural language and it goes into whatever data repository you have and runs a query in SQL, so that you don't need to be a data scientist or data analyst to be able to extract knowledge from your data. So that's just to make this.
Yeah, SQL
super
sucks. I mean, like, but it works and it's scalable, and nobody likes writing it, but it just works. So you have to keep writing it. But what happened was we approached text to SQL like how we would approach a search problem instead of a developer problem. This is basically only happens if you deep down like care about something that it just comes out in everything you do. Like, and for me, it was trying to like search was always a passion. My CTO, my co-founder, his first job was in Microsoft Bing, and my other co-founder, he had basically built all the ranking systems at Quora. So we were all like just deeply passionate about search. So even though we were working on text to SQL because we thought the VCs knew like this is the right problem to work on, we would approach it as if it was a search problem. So we would just scrape a lot of data from the web that could be organized as relational databases in the form of tables, and then we would power like search on top of them, with text to SQL running under the hood. And then the reason to do that was nobody would give us their internal data, and we have to build something anyway because I was like, why as a company you got to do something every week. And then if we scrape a lot of tables from the web, people will be convinced that we can handle a large database. So the first database that we really scraped hard was Twitter. This was before Elon was the CEO, so you could actually scrape data for free, which we did. And so we basically built this thing like that was an amazing way to search, do graph search on Twitter. Like you could ask anything like, who does Matt Turk follow that are like, I could potentially follow, like, I'm not following yet. So that so if I think he has great taste and like, he he has like, some people that he's following that I should want to follow, or like what are the tweets that, like Musk has liked recently in the last 10 days. These are questions that generally people are curious about, but currently cannot do on Twitter easily. Those are the kind of things we were like, having like, working. And this is actually what convinced a lot of great investors to like invest in us, because when they used this tool, they found it pretty useful for themselves. And we were finding it useful for ourselves too, because as a founder, I would often want intros, and I would often like be like, who can I DM directly if they're following me, or like if I know someone they follow, like maybe they can DM them. That's how we started building this, and we realized that okay, like there's this version that's running on structured data, which seems like a great search engine. What about unstructured data, everything on the web? Like what if I want to know like a summary of one person's tweets? And then we connected it to like a regular search index, and just pulled up all the activity and gave a very neat like 3 or 4 sentence summary with sources. And that with sources part is because we are two co-founders, or at least three co-founders, of all have PhDs. And PhDs, like citations is like your currency. You're taught to just maximize it, just like in VCs are taught to maximize their assets under management. Like, academics are taught to maximize the citations. So we were obsessed about citations. So we were like, okay, it'd be great to give answers as if an academic would write the answer with inline citations. And then we built that tool too. And so we were kind of a confused company. We had like 2 different products, like a SQL search thing and a regular search with answers, not knowing what to do. And then one day, like ChatGPT launched. We had all these things internally. We were using it. Our friends were using it. And then I talked to my investor, like Nat Friedman, and hey, I don't know what to do. The search thing is cool. Like I actually want to launch it, but everyone's going to think like I'm taking on Google, and like, who's the startup that even like deserves to take on Google? Like you better not, everyone's going to think about us like a clown. And then he said this one thing that was pretty hard hitting. He said, you're irrelevant anyway. Like today you're irrelevant. And yeah, it's true. I mean, most startups are. And even if you launch this and it's a failure, you're going to be at the same level. But if it's a success, it's going to change your future. And that asymmetry, those kind of asymmetric moments are what kind of changes your trajectory a lot. So I got the courage, and all our investors were like encouraging. None of them were like, you're not supposed to do this. All Nat said was get 100 users. Let's start with that. And we launched it 1 week after ChatGPT came out, and we got a lot more than 100 users, and it kept growing through the vacation. So we got we also launched a Twitter search too. We wanted to get data on both. And we realized that the Twitter search part was like pretty small audience. Like there were very few, it's much smaller market. Well, the generic search was much larger market. So we wanted to continue running both because we didn't have to actually maintain much on the other end. Obviously, Elon becoming CEO changed a lot because we cannot like scrape Twitter continuously anymore. So we obviously killed that version, and this regular search answers was like, growing a lot, and we continued to focus more on it and decided to like commit to working on that.
Amazing. So fast forward to today. So you're effectively a Google and ChatGPT competitor. So people can go to Perplexity AI and run searches on the open web where they get very good results and with stuff that's completely updated and citation that support the responses. So that's where you are. And you have several million users per month? Or?
Yeah. We have a lot of millions of monthly active users and millions of daily queries. So it's growing a lot, and almost like it feels like a responsibility to keep improving it. I mean, Mark Andreessen and Lex Friedman had this podcast, and Lex asks him there about like, do you really think like people are just going to keep consuming 10 blue links? And he's like, no, like, but they still exist. Like he's like, horses still exist today. Like some people still use horses to go from one place to another. So he gives that analogy, and like our belief is that maybe today it's still niche. It's still niche enough that people view it as like this research tool. If you have like deeper, more complex questions, but 5 or 10 years from now, like you're not going to consume 10 blue links. It's going to be a chatbot or assistant that you just ask questions, like how you would ask another person. And in that era, I don't think Google is going to be the one single monopoly, because they're already like far behind in this interface.
Yep. So I actually went to Perplexity AI and I said, "Hey, I'm interviewing Aravind Srinivas, CEO of Perplexity AI, on the stage, and for podcast recording as well. What questions should I ask?" And it's actually give me questions that make me feel very disintermediated as a moderator, because that's pretty much what.
Did you also try to generate the answers?
Yeah. And the video and the audio, and then we can all focus on the pizza here. Do what we would do best, which is eating. That's a great idea. So one of the questions was what you just started getting into. How does Perplexity AI search engine differ from those of Google and Microsoft, and what unique features does it offer? And I'd love to jump into this great question from Perplexity AI and have you talk. Maybe give us a little bit of a product tour. So that's the core product. And then there's the pro version, and then there's Perplexity Labs and the API products. If you could take those three in turn, that would be great.
Okay, sounds good. So basically, if you go to Perplexity and ask a question, you get answers, and you also get the corresponding citations. So the content is only being pulled up from the cited links and nothing else. So unlike ChatGPT, it's not making up stuff. It's only taking stuff that already exists on the web, but giving it to you in a manner that you can ingest and don't have to like open all those links yourself and read. It's almost like somebody did that job for you and like gave you a concise summary. And you can still verify in case there's some hallucination or incorrectness. Still open the link and read yourself too. So this is pretty useful already, because the links that get cited are almost like been filtered for quality, and so it gives you already like a much better experience, even if you just care about the links, and saves you a lot of time in reading them too. Now we have a version called Copilot, which is like a toggle on the search bar. In future, we don't think that'll be a toggle. It's just going to be like one single experience that will resemble the Copilot. The idea of the Copilot is it's almost like a browsing companion. It's not just going to do one search query for you, whatever you asked. It's going to break down what you asked into like more pieces, especially if what you asked was pretty ambiguous. Our philosophy for this thing was that right now, all these products, Bard, ChatGPT, Perplexity, are all like requiring people to be very precise prompt engineers. Like explain like I'm five, tell me this, or like you got to like write these detailed prompts. Our philosophy is that if you want to take AI and like make it like be widely accessible and like regularly used by every person in the world, you shouldn't expect people to be great prompt engineers. You should work on the user's behalf and try to understand their underlying intent, and keep expanding the prompt in a back and forth interaction. So that's what Copilot does. You come and ask like, help me buy headphones, and the AI is going to come back and ask you, what headphones do you actually want? Do you want noise canceling? Do you want over the ear? Like, do you want like wireless? And then you're going to click buttons. So this UI is just dynamically generated. And then it'll ask you, what's your budget? And you pick your budget. And then it's going to ask you like, which brands do you like? And you pick like one or two. And then you just get the final answer that's been concisely catered to what you selected in these, interactive questions. And these questions are going to be different for different kind of queries you ask. And our belief is that that's the future of how you would discover information. Anything you have in your mind, you're just high-level curious, but you don't have to be so articulate and precise. And the AI will work with you together and get to where you want to be. So that's our vision for Copilot. And like in our Pro plan, we offer you unlimited uses of Copilot. As for like Perplexity Labs and the API, everyone's been talking about us as a wrapper over ChatGPT, like GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 models for OpenAI, because that's the right thing to do as a startup with like very little funding. The long term, you do have to like try to ship some of your own models. You kind of have to be an orchestra of many models, like some closed proprietary models that others have, and some models that you are like custom building on top of open source. That way you can drive more efficiency into your product, scale your usage, don't run out of funding, and then when you actually make money, like you can be profitable. So the first step towards that is making all the open source models run efficiently on your own GPUs. So that's what we worked on. Like we have the best inference infrastructure for all these models, and we made them available in terms of a nice chat UI frontend called Perplexity Labs. So you can use that as a way to chat with Llama or Mistral models. Think about it as ChatGPT that's running on like open source models. That's what we have in Perplexity Labs. And our API offers access to these models, exact models that we have on Labs, at like where if you actually want to build your own applications on top of it, especially for people who want like smaller models that run even faster than GPT 3.5 Turbo, and you want to save costs, you can come use our APIs. Our long-term roadmap is understand how people use it, battle test our infrastructure for this, and when we have the quality match with GPT 3.5 Turbo, start shipping like these models into our core product too, and use them already in our core product for like things outside of the summarization use case. That's how we want to like eventually stop being a wrapper.
Can you talk about a little bit, like for those various products, how you sort of go to market with this? I mean, obviously, and we'll go back into some technical stuff, but like while we're on the topic of those various things, because in particular, like you have this consumer product and therefore motion, but then the API is more of a developer kind of like motion, right? So how do you think about succeeding on both fronts?
Yeah, right now we've tied both together. So the only way to get access to our APIs is you be on our Pro plan, and then you get the Copilot unlimited experience, as well as like a developer access to our APIs with a certain restricted rate limit. And those who want higher rate limits can come to us separately, and like on an ad hoc basis, we extend it for them. We have to come up with a usage-based pricing, obviously, and we have to like build a whole API team for this. And that's sort of what we think we should be doing. We are first trying to understand like what is the market here, like what is people's incentive to come and use these models in a world where GPT 3.5 Turbo and GPT-4 already exist, and these are amazing models. And I think we can add a different value through our RAG, retrieval augmented generation APIs, which are still not out yet, but we are working on getting it out. And in that world, I think we are committed to helping people like deploy using our models and APIs for their applications if they're interested, right? So you want to start small. Like I think the best things is like start small, allow people who want like really tiny models to be deployed onto their product. We are a good fit for people who are trying to build consumer-facing applications, because that way like they don't really care so much about SOC 2, Type 1, Type 2, and all these things, and like we don't have all these things yet either. And they would benefit from all the work that we have done on like high throughput and low latency, because that's something we need ourselves to be users of our own API. So they would benefit from all of that. So we are still going to be pretty focused and not like go all like in on the API and enterprise business. And if it's successful and if it's growing, like we will commit to like running the company like Amazon, where there's AWS and there's core Amazon.com simultaneously fueling each other.
And for the consumer side of things, like how do you, I guess, how did you get to several million users already, which is incredibly impressive, and how do you plan on getting people to? Is that a strategy where you focus on certain use cases, or you're completely horizontal?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. Like, how did we like end up getting a lot of users despite not being vertically focused, and honestly, the answer is like lot of other people did market study for us and sent the reports, and I read the reports, and the answer is that we are seen as this tool for research. We appeal to people who really wanted to like do a lot of web research and like dig deeper in topics and like, be curious about things. That was a small total addressable market there that we kind of cornered.
Is it because of the citations, you think?
Citations and like fact that it's like very accurate, very fast and reliable UX. So we didn't actually take on Google. Like we never said, "Hey guys, I'm the Google competitor. I'm gonna kill the monopoly or something." Instead, we said, "Hey, like this is a pretty useful tool. Like you guys are all spending a lot of time browsing and doing your research. Why don't you come and use this tool? It'll help you." And people started using it more as a research companion. And even though that's like a tiny fraction of the search market, you have cornered first. Now we cornered it, you got like a few millions of users. You start being useful to them in other ways. And then they're going to spread it word of mouth to their friends and friends of friends, and like you slowly grow. That's the idea.
And going forward from that strong basis,
yeah,
how do you keep going?
Yeah, so we are expanding, right? Like for example, not every query needs an LLM. If you come and ask like time in New York or weather in New York, like we would written a small widget similar to how Google does. And that doesn't actually even run through an LLM as big as like GPT 3.5 Turbo. And like that's why like this is a fun problem to work on. This is not a problem that'll be dominated by the company with the largest language model. Hence why like, I actually think Google is making a big mistake by trying to do whatever OpenAI is doing, right? Like going after them with the large, they're having GPT-4, I'm going to train Gemini. When you're working on search, you're more about playing the orchestra. You're more about like doing so many things simultaneously together at once that the user has a great experience, but doesn't actually know what's going on behind the hood, under the hood, right? So our focus is like slowly expand the category of queries that we are really good at. We started being good at like, anything that requires like you to like read 5 or 6 different web pages and give you an answer. Then we slowly expand in terms of what is in our strengths and what is in our competitors' weakness. And then be a greedy algorithm, like just slowly start expanding. And if you have like a pretty good coverage area, then you have like sufficiently large user base that uses you pretty regularly.
And still on the obvious, question of the competitive advantage and, the whole Google thing. Like I read somewhere so far you've been using other people's indexes and crawlers. What was that? Was that Bing initially, or?
Yeah, we started with Bing, and I think like we're not fully independent of other people's indexes.
And you're building your own, right? That's
we are building our own index. In fact, that is like the most ambitious project that we are working on. Everyone's going behind training GPT-4. We believe that building your own index is even harder than trying to compete with GPT-4 because it's not a problem that's just solved with money. If there is a problem, I'm not saying GPT-4 capability matching is just solved with money. You still need amazing talent and research teams to get it done. But there are at least 2 or 3 teams in the world that can potentially get there. Building an index is like really hard because it needs you to have a good team, some amount of capital, not necessarily a lot, and an actual product that people use. Without people using a product, there's no way to build an index. That's why most of the companies that were started earlier that tried to take on Google never really succeeded because they never got the usage.
And that's because you need the feedback loop.
Yeah, you need the feedback loop, and you need to keep crawling more and more of the web that actually matters. And that's why we think we have a shot at this game.
Is that right? It's crawling the entire web doesn't cost necessarily that much money.
Yeah, crawling is not the hard part.
Yeah,
you can write a crawler, like rent a lot of EC2 instances and keep doing it and like deduplicating it and keep expanding it. The size of the index is not important. It's for the quality of the index and ranking. Quality of the index and ranking. These are the two most important parts. And that's why like you need to get the good kind of queries. Like there's a lot of junk on the internet. Like internet is Pareto like distribution, power law, right? Like 90% of the values and like 10% of the pages. And you want to get that 90% value as a startup.
Okay. That's incredible. I mean, I just like love the level of ambition throughout this entire thing. And it's easy to be ambitious and make grand claims, but like you guys are actually just executing at incredible speed. So it's been wonderful to see. Maybe to close before I open to questions, sort of like random kind of notes based on some of your tweets or things I've seen you talk about. Thoughts on open source, the importance of open source in the ecosystem and how to support it?
Yeah, I think open source models are, like definitely going to like work out in the long run. Today it looks like, they're like lagging behind GPT-4. But that's also because the amount of compute thrown at them is like way lower. It's also important for the world. Like otherwise, like, if the person having the best model controls the prices, we'll end up in a situation like how, like say NVIDIA, for example, controls the GPU compute and like nobody can tell them what you got to price H100s or something. We're all like, so that shouldn't happen if you want to access these large language models to build your applications. Like you shouldn't have only like one single choice or like two choices, especially when you don't control the price. So that's what open source models enable. They enable like democratization and like they enable the fact that there's going to be a free market here. And we are supporting it in a way where we are not the ones building these open source models because that requires a lot more capital. But we want to like make sure anybody can access them easily. So we are democratizing the access to them through our APIs, through our labs, and like you can come and play with it. You don't need to go to ChatGPT at some point. Like, these models will become pretty good that you can use these models through our labs too. So that's the idea.
All right, and maybe just one last thing, like another tweet I really liked. What we have today is turn data into compute. What we'll have tomorrow is turn compute into data, and then the resulting data back into compute and repeat. So that's the rise of synthetic data.
Yeah. So synthetic data is like the $1 trillion question. Like if you can actually make good use of synthetic data and use that to build the next most intelligent language model, that basically decides if the company that has the most compute in the world or data in the world, like which matters more, right? And especially if we can get a smaller model to be like really good through synthetic data, this changes a lot. Like you actually don't need like that big a GPU cluster for inference anymore. And that's why like this is so interesting a question. And I think at some point, like we'll all saturate on data that exists on the internet. That's interesting enough for models to keep improving on. That the next big capability jump is probably going to come from the models teaching themselves. And then if that part is figured out, there is no upper bound to it. It can just keep happening recursively, recursive self-improvement. That's the holy grail of like artificial general intelligence, right? And that part hasn't been figured out in the context of large language models. Currently, they're just still like predicting the next word on the internet. But if they can be used to teach themselves, and if that's a scalable process that can be repetitively like iterated upon, without any human in the loop or like with minimal human requirement, that's actually gonna like potentially lead to like the most general form of intelligence.
All right, amazing. Questions?
Hi, Aravind. Tanya Dua, I'm the tech editor at LinkedIn News. 2 questions. You said, rightly so, the internet is full of junk, and you focus a lot on citations. Misinformation is one of the problems. There's bad actors. what are some safeguards you're putting in place so that, it's not giving you misinformation as an answer? Or if I'm like, okay, help me build a bomb, and you're not giving me those answers. So how are you putting the right safeguards in place? And then the second question, I'll let you answer this one first.
Yeah, so for misinformation, I think like there are two parts you can work on. One is like the quality of your index, so that every, you have a web page, you have a URL, and like you have how you store it. Make sure that it's as precise and accurate as possible and as updated as possible. And then the quality of the large language model, like try to make sure it obeys the instruction and doesn't make up things and hallucinate at the time of the answer. And the third part, outside, if you address these two things, most of the problems are solved. The last part is like, if these two things are accurate, but the domain itself is like the person who wrote the content on the web page has intentionally spread wrong things, and then you're like just coding them. Technically, you've done your job. You've still said according to this person, so and so, right? But it's still like you got to have some authority score on like which domains you consider. Like just like how when you write a paper, like which papers you cite. Like, oh, like it's from this particular university, so it's probably of high reputation. So you got to build your own page rank of the web too, and that you do through like similar to how Larry Page did it. Like, oh, an important page usually gets cited a lot. So if a particular domain gets cited like across like many answers, then that's usually a good domain. And then like you build your own trust score, and you use that to weight like which pages you take the information from. It's hard problem. I'm not saying it's easy, but at least it's better than like humans controlling it like in Wikipedia. It's algorithmic and it can be iterated upon.
Second question is, you were talking about building your own index.
Yeah.
And crawling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of publishers. I've been at traditional publishers that are blocking crawlers.
Yeah.
Do you see that as being a hindrance in your efforts? And how do you sort of solve that problem?
Yeah, I mean, like if they don't want to be crawled, we shouldn't crawl them. That's just been how the internet has worked. Like, people have the robots that text file, and like, if they don't let you do it, then you should just not do it. And it's in their interest, honestly, to get crawled, because like it's not like we are taking away their content and not giving them credit. That's actually why I love the citation interface. A lot of people are like, oh, why do I need your citations? I can keep OpenAI will train the next version of the model that will be trained on internet data up to 2023. It's going to work faster than your thing. And like, I don't need to see these links. But the honest answer is that even if like, they do, I like the citation interface because as an academic, it resonates with me. I like giving credit to the people whose content is being put here, and it's actually fair use. The fact that you're attributing credit is fair use. Yeah, the other profession that does this is journalism, right? Like I come from the other one, academia.
Hi. There's a lot of unanswered questions related to interaction patterns with large language model based systems, and you talked about how early on you have these easy questions and you can ask them and you get an answer, like the answer engine, but it's the people's perception is it's like niche research use case. But then you added this toggle to do copilot mode for handling like ambiguous or nuanced queries or multi-step things, and having this like back and forth. How do you see the evolution of that on the spectrum of like human involvement and like structuring it? Like you have that focus mode where you have these, kind of configuring the settings versus a fully autonomous thing where it's like I ask my question and it figures everything out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a general saying that like the fewer toggles and modes in a product, the product is better. Like the more work you abstract out, and like the front end should be minimal, right? And that's what we are trying hard. I think the higher level philosophy is there's research, decision, action. That's the loop, right? And if we can have the entire flow handled for you, we should be able to like just be like an agent, like a true co-pilot a true assistant that's in your, working for you and like helping you save time and like, getting things done.
Hey, so you guys are basically the best in web-based chat interfaces. And then you have this other thing where you're getting in the inference business of open source models.
Yeah.
From the outside, it feels like kind of a odd tangent.
Yeah.
And you were talking about how it could be market penetration and sort of you're helping devs in other ways and maybe they use Perplexity for other things. But do you have this vision of like how that all comes together? Or
Yeah, like I said, our goal is to serve these open source models in our product, right? And not just rely on one provider or two providers. And that needs that needs two components. That needs the open source models or fine-tuned versions of them to match the closed ones. And that's not the case today, and that's going to take a while to get there. And the second component is, even if there exists a checkpoint today that's as good as the closed models, it's still not in your incentive to use them and serve them yourself, because you're going to burn more money than paying for the closed ones. Because the closed ones are being served in such efficient levels that we need to match that level of efficiency, right? And our belief is that like both of these problems will be solved, and what we can at least start working on is the second component, where like at least let's get the inference efficiency that's needed, such that in case somebody drops a model that's as high quality as the closed models, we'll at least be in a position to switch over. And then we, by doing this through an API, we can battle test this through other people too, not just wait until we serve the model on our product, because our users want the best model anyway. Like they want the best answers. Like if our answers suck because we're using a worse model, just because it benefits us to serve these models ourselves, our users are not going to like it. But that shouldn't delay us from battle testing the infrastructure. So hence why we decided to, commit ourselves to opening up an API. And like, look, if it's a wrong move, then, we'll find out soon, right? Right now, it definitely looks like a distraction. Like, why are we working on it? Like, that's the number one question, like, everyone's asked me so far.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
It seems like NVIDIA and Microsoft selected Coreweave, and partly NVIDIA likes Coreweave because they don't make any of their own silicon, so that they can, tomorrow you could get 10,000 GPUs running instantly.
And Jensen's an investor in Coreweave.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah, I know the founder, but it got really interesting because your comment about compute, data, using the compute to generate the data. They partnered with a company called Vast, which is using AI, and it looks really exciting because at first you could say, oh, they're just a cloud server farm, but they really now, with this vast data using AI. I was wondering if you had any thoughts, like what infrastructure you and your clients can use, could you run on Coreweave, or are you agnostic to the platform, or do you run on your own bare metal systems?
Yeah, so the GPUs are still NVIDIA's GPUs, right? Like nobody else has any hardware that matches their, the full package of efficiency and software supporting it in the form of CUDA, TensorRT, and things like that. I think for the cloud, you can use AWS or Azure. Both of them have their benefits. AWS is like pretty good at the full package. Again, you can deploy a product and you can use it for a bunch of other things outside of AI, and you can use their GPU infrastructure. They have NVIDIA GPUs, and you can keep everything in one place, which is a major benefit of AWS. And you actually don't need to work. You don't need that much customer support here in AWS because most of the things work as expected. Or in Azure, the benefit is you get Azure OpenAI, so you get access to all the OpenAI models on Azure. So that's the benefit, and AWS is trying to make up for it by giving you access to Claude, which they think will eventually catch up to OpenAI models. So there are it's more of a trade-off of what you kind of want at this point. Yeah, we don't use Coreweave because they quoted a very high pricing to us, and like we decided not to use them.
Hey,
So
so you were mentioning that you envision Perplexity to be kind of a co-pilot where people use it almost regularly. Do you envision it to have like plugins and ways for consumers to bring in their own data? So, maybe I want to bring my shopping data, financial data, and things of that sort. So it's more customized.
yeah, so plugins. By that, do you mean like just connect your data through like a login from your Amazon account or something, or do you actually mean like OpenAI plugins? Okay, so yeah, we don't believe in the OpenAI plugins vision. Like if you look at our Wolfram focus, right? Like it works much better than their Wolfram plugin that they did. And like when third-party developers do plugins, at least at this point, this technology is not that reliable enough that it works out of the box. So when there are like a family of plugins and like you don't even know which plugin to use when, if you don't know it as a human, how would the AI know it, right? The AI has to use your ground truth as training data to improve upon these things. So our vision is like at this point, like today or like maybe the next year, the reliability that you want for a great consumer experience requires you to like do the whole orchestration yourself and not rely on like developers to do it for you. Bringing in your own data is very interesting. We are kind of trying to slowly get there. We started off with AI profile where you can tell more about yourself and then experience gets sort of more personalized to you. And we are trying to understand how that's adding benefit already. We're allowing people to upload their own files and ask questions about it. So you can actually like just export your Amazon purchases and like, just upload it as a file and like still ask questions on Perplexity. But doing even like, making it even simpler for you where like it's already there and integrated is like, definitely something we can look into.
All right. This was wonderful. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Aravind. Very impressive what you built so far. Really appreciate your coming here and telling us a story. Thank you.
Thank you.